Thanks for joining me on this project. Check out the links below this video for a full list of materials. We're going to start by picking up 4 tubelets. Push those tubelets down towards the end of your thread, and we're going to take both ends of our thread and just tie a little knot in between the first and last tublet so that when we give it a nice pull, we make a little square. I'm going to add another knot just for some extra security there so my first knot doesn't come undone. And that is going to form the basis of my component. So you can see here I don't have very much tail thread. I just have just enough here so that at the end I can use that to tie another knot and burn it down. So you don't need very much at all, just a couple inches. I'm going to take my needle and thread and go through my tubelet, just the next tubelet there next to your knot. And I'm going to start adding around the edges of all of my tubelets a set of 4 seed beads. So here I am going to pick up 4 of my 11-ohs, pass through my tublet again so that when I pull the thread, what it's going to do is pull those 4 seed beads so that they're sitting right on the outside next to the tublet. I'm going to pass through to the next tublet and I'm going to do the same thing. So in that same manner, I'm just going to add 4 seed beads to the outside of each one of my tubelets. After adding 4 sets of 11-ohs, 1 to each one of my tubelets, I'm going to pass through my next tublet, and then I'm going to make what I call a little U-turn, and I'm going to take my needle and thread and come back towards me through one of those sets of 4 11-ohs. So I'm going through that tublet and then back through the 11-ohs on the outside of that tublet. I'm going to take my needle through the next set of 4 11-ohs. And as I do that, and I give it a little pull, I'm going to start pulling all of those sets of 11-ohs towards the inside of the project. So instead of sitting on the outside of the tubelets, they're now going to sit more on top. So just going around and picking up or passing through each one of those sets of 4 seed beads, keeping your tail thread out of the way. So here I am on my last one. I'm just going to close this gap here, pass through that set of 4, and now that I've gone all the way around, connecting all of those groups of 4 seed beads, my seed beads are now sitting on top of my tubelets. I'm going to go through another 1 or 2 sets of seed beads just so that I make sure that I have everything nice and secure. I always like to go through another 1 or 2 sets just so that I can give it a little pull and make sure that I don't have any slack. Now I'm going to add my pearl. So picking up 1 pearl, you're going to cross diagonally to the other side of your project, and you're going to go through one of those sets of 4 seed beads. So your pearl is actually the whole of your pearl is going to go diagonally through your project. And push that pearl down. So just give a little push and then pass through the next set of seed beads. So now I should be back at the other side of my pearl where the hole is. So I can pass through that hole again. And then I'm going to pass through another set of 4 seed beads. And the next set. So all I'm doing here is just securing that pearl by going through it a couple times. And I'll go through that pearl just one more time. So I think I've passed through a total of 3 times now. Through one of my sets here on the outside of 4 11-ohs. And once you feel like that pearl is securely in there and you feel like you've got all your 11 seed beads around the pearl nice and tight and you don't have any slack in that group of seed beads, go ahead and take your needle and thread and pass through the tublet under that group of 4 seed beads where you're coming out. Now we're going to work on adding 1 11 in each one of these corners. So coming out of one of my tubelets, pick up 1 11, pass through the next tublet, 11, pass through the next tublet, and all I'm doing is just adding one of my seed beads in each one of these little corners, just to fill that corner with something so I don't have that empty. So now you can say I've added, on the back here I have those 4 seed beads. I'm going to flip this project to the front, and so now you should have a nice little component that looks like this. I'm going to continue making these components until I have 3 more attached to this one. So I'm going to use the same steps and just add 3 more attached to each other. So to start here with that, I'm going to go through my 11. If you're already coming out of a tublet, then you're already in position. I just want to be coming out of a tublet. And I'm going to share an 11. So I'm going to pick up an 11, a tublet, and an 11. And I'm going to go around this tublet again. So now what I've done is I've added just 1 tublet here to the outside of this tublet that was part of my component. And I'm going to go through my 11 and through that new tublet. And now I'm in position to add 3 more tubelets. And this will make the base of that new component. So here now I have my set of 4 tubelets. I'm going to pass through here again just to make sure that I get it nice and tight so I don't have it wonky and I don't have it trying to fall apart on me. I want to make sure that I have my beads nice and tight, sitting nice and tight next to each other. And now I'm going to follow the same steps that I followed on this first component, and I'm going to add my seed beads and then my pearl in the center, and I'll go around and add 1 more 11 into each one of these corners, just like I did on the first section. After attaching 3 more components, we'll have a row of 4 components all attached, and if I flip this over, you see that for each pearl I have 4 tubelets around it. So we want to make sure that we didn't accidentally share one of these tubelets as we created our next component, because that's pretty easy to do. So we want to make sure that we didn't accidentally skip a step, and we have 4 components or 4 tubelets for each pearl. Flipping to the front of the project, I want to have my thread coming out of one of my tubelets, and that's going to be the very last tublet on either side, doesn't matter, but we're going to have our thread coming out of our last tublet. I'm then going to take my whole piece here, and I'm going to bring my first section and my last section together so that I can then join these 2 sections together. So just like we joined our other sections, I'm going to pick up 1 seed bead, and I'm going to pass through my tublet, and as I do this you can see it's going to draw my ends together, and then I'm going to pick up another seed bead, pass through the tublet on the other side, pulling those ends together. So then all of my connections between each component should look exactly the same. So I'm just going to reinforce this connection here by going through my 11-0, my tubelet, and my 11-0s again, just making sure that that connection is secure so that I can move on and not worry about that getting loose. So now you have something that looks a bit like a ring here, all my components together in a circle. So this is the 4 sides of my box. So now I need to make a top and a bottom. Wherever your thread is coming out, you just want to work your way to one of the tubelets that is at the top, or I would call this the top here. So let's push this, let's just put this down here for a second. And you can see I have my 4 tubelets at the top facing upwards. So I just want to get my thread coming out of one of those tubelets so that I can then start to fill in the gap here at the top of my box. So just like I did the other components, I'm going to pick up an 11-0 seed bead, a tubelet, and an 11-0. And this is the same exact process, or these are the same exact steps really to adding the other components. But I'm going to add this in a way, this component on the top in a way that it's connected to all the other components instead of just one other component. And just reinforcing this connection here. And I've got quite a few little seed beads here, so I want to make sure that I'm going through the right ones, not accidentally picking up one that I don't want to go through. Through that side 11-0 and back through the tubelet, so I've just reinforced that connection. So now what I can do is I can pick up my 4 tubelets, or my 3 tubelets, this one here being my 4th one. So just like we did the other sections, just like we added those, I've got my 3 tubelets here. Go back down through that tubelet, and there's my 4 tubelets creating that square base. It's a little wonky. It's going to want to sort of go in different directions here, and that's fine. You just want to make sure you're focusing on this one component and don't worry about what the rest of your piece is doing. Okay, so I'm going to add those sets of 4 seed beads. I'm going to add my 11-0s to the outside of all these tubelets. So I'm going to continue and make this component just like I made the other ones, and then I will attach it to the rest of my piece. After completing this component, I should have my ring of 4 components or sections, with now my 5th one, which kind of acts like a little lid to these other 4 components. I'm going to make sure that my thread and needle are coming out of one of the tubelets here on the side of this 5th component. And then when I lay that down on top of the other 4 to be the top, I'm going to then finish making all my connections between the tubelets. So here with my thread coming out of that tubelet, I just need to pick up one 11-0, pass through the tubelet that's sitting under it. And again, I want to be careful here not to go through any of the other seed beads, because I have a lot of different seed beads in close proximity here in the corners. So I just want to make sure I'm not picking up any that I don't want to. Picking up another 11-0 and back through the tubelet at the top, or the one that's part of my 5th component. And you can see how it creates a beautiful little triangle section of seed beads in my corner. I'm going to pass through my 11/0 and the next tubelet, I'm working on that 5th component that I made. And I'm going to go ahead and attach this the same way, just picking up an 11/0, passing through the tubelet right beneath it, picking up an 11/0, and passing through the tubelet again, part of my 5th component. And I'm going to do this. I have one more here to do. So I'm going to pass through again my seed bead and my tubelet. So now this is the last connection that I need to make on this 5th component. Again, just passing through that tubelet right underneath. And as you do this, just go ahead and push your seed beads in position. So if there's anything that looks like it's sticking up, just give it a little wiggle. Just give your project a little wiggle, give your thread a little tug, and just push things back into place where they belong. And one more seed bead here, back through the tubelet. And then that is essentially all of my connections completed. So now all I need to do is tie off my thread on this side. I can go around and just make sure everything's tight and just reinforce anything that I want to. And then I'm going to tie off my thread, and I'm going to start on the other side here, and I'm going to do another component. Now this will be my 6th, and I'll pick just any one of these tubelets here to attach my 6th component to, following the exact same steps that I used to attach this component here, my 5th one. And then before we finish that off, I will add a bead in the center here just to hold it together and give it a little structure underneath. So I'm going to start working on my 6th component, and then I'm going to come back and show you how to finish off your whole piece. After adding the 6th section, you're now going to have a little box here with a lid. So into this box, before we close it all up, I'm going to add a 12mm bead. I have a 12mm pearl here, and you're just going to use any bead that you have that's about 12mm and that fills in that space. You don't want it to be too loose, because when you close it up, you want that bead inside to push the components out so that it gives it the structure that it needs on the inside. So I'm going to add that 12mm bead, and then I'm going to go ahead and continue to close up my box the same way that I did on the other side with the 5th component. I'm just making that connection in between all of my tubelets by going through the tubelet, picking up an 11/0, and then going through the other tubelet. Now, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of little seed beads here in a tight space. So if you accidentally go through one, just back out of it and continue. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this and do all my connections here, and then I will show you my completed piece. Once your bead is done, there are lots of things to do with this large of a beaded bead. It's a great focal bead if you're going to make an asymmetrical necklace, and you can actually string it using the 12mm bead inside. So once you locate the hole of that 12mm bead, you can take a head pin or stringing wire and take it right through the hole of that 12mm bead inside, and then string it just like that. If you are going to plan on stringing your bead, what I would do is take a head pin and add it and run it through the 12mm bead inside before you sew everything together, and that way you will be able to identify very quickly where the hole in your bead is. So one thing that is optional, and at this point the bead is complete, so this is not a necessary step, but if you feel that you want to make the bead even tighter, if you're not quite happy or satisfied with how tight you've got all of your connections, you can take your needle and thread and pass through all of these 11-0 seed beads that are at the corners of your bead. So that's going to be all those 11-0s. It's going to be a total of 6 11-0s. And just pass through all of them. And then you can tie that off so that it pulls them all together. And like I said, this isn't a necessary step, but if you're looking to make your piece a little bit tighter, this is definitely something that would help. So go through all of these beads, and you can use a new piece of thread for this, and just pass through all of these. And I've gone through twice. And now when I'm back at the beginning at my tail thread, I'm just going to do a simple little overhand knot, making sure that I get that knot in between 2 seed beads. Sometimes the knot likes to move on you, so you just want to make sure you're getting that knot where you want it. And then I like to take my needle and pass through a bead just to pull that knot into a bead. And then you can burn down your thread ends. So I'm just passing through all 6 of those beads in the corner, tying them nice and tight into a circle, and pulling that all closer together. So you can do that on each corner if you'd like to pull everything closer together, make it tighter, and just an overall more complete project. But that is optional, so that is only if you want to do that. So there you go, there is your finished piece. And like I said, lots of fun opportunities to use this. Use it as an ornament, or use it as a bead, or any other way that you think of using it. If you have some other fun ideas that I didn't mention, go ahead and put them in the comments below, or share them in Facebook, because I would love to see what you come up with. I hope you enjoyed making this piece. If you did enjoy this tutorial, definitely subscribe to our channel if you're not already. This way you'll be notified as soon as we have other tutorials that you may want to try. You can also like this video, you can share it with your friends, and of course you can always take pictures of your own creation and share it with us on Facebook. We look forward to seeing you there.